Okay, I will call this special meeting of council. Oh, yes, it is, I guess, a special meeting. Call it to order. I've had call or an email rather from Councillor Davey that he will be about 20 minutes late. I think Yvonne is here, isn't she? Yeah. Okay, and Councillor Gazzola is away right now. So we'll begin. And Laurie, are you introducing it, or is it? It's Mr. Wilmer. Okay. Just hang on a second. This isn't quite set up. Okay. I also have Rod. Your button is on. Did you mean to have that on? Okay. So, Mr. Wilmer.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. So certainly Theron Kramer and Laurie Major will be carrying the large majority of this presentation and discussion this afternoon. By way of introductory comment, I wanted to just give an explanatory note. So it has been a concern of staff that in the past, when council has adopted strategic plans, it seemed as though council wasn't as invested in the strategic plan as would be preferred or would be ideal. And so, with this go-round of the old habits die hard, not the official plan, the strategic plan, we've made more efforts to involve council early and often throughout the process. So you'll recall that Laurie and Theron were here last fall to explain the overall process of the strategic plan and to get council's input on that. And Veronix were here a few months ago to explain the results of the community survey, and we're here again today. So part of this is to make use of opportunities to get council engaged in the discussion, and so that when this comes to the new council in the new year, it won't be news. It will be something that has been discussed with the returning members of council and discussed in public for the community and those who are candidates for council now. They'll be aware of it. And so right now we're moving into the stage of the discussion that is not, that I don't want to steal Laurie's thunder, but is being branded as Your Kitchener, Your Say. And so it's following up on the Environics survey. And we wanted to give council a meaningful role in this. But we're also aware of the fact that because this is an election year, we don't want to give current sitting members of council an unfair advantage over other candidates for council. And that being said, you still have a job to do, and this is still part of your term, and so so we decided that we should provide a meaningful role for councillors, and because of that tension and that balance that we're trying to strike, we wanted to make sure we didn't go too far and have the councillors so involved that it might be hard for anyone to draw the lines between what's doing your job as a councillor and what's campaigning. And so that's sort of the context around this, is that we're wanting to make sure that councillors have some involvement in the strategic plan and that it's meaningful involvement, but also aware that we don't want to be creating a situation where we're pushing the boundaries too far. So with that as background, I pass it along to Theron.
Welcome, Theron. And I'm sure we'll say it at the end, but once more at the beginning of the process, thank you and to your committee for untold hours that you put into this. It's obviously, from this report, it's very thorough and a lot of thought put into it. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I've been here a lot in the last couple of months, and that's because we do have a lot going on at Compass Kitchener at this point. And for this process, we have set up a separate subcommittee that actually includes quite a number of Compass Kitchener members, but also much of what that subcommittee decides does come back to the full Compass Kitchener for vetting. So my role here is just very briefly to look at the background and context, and I will be brief because I think most of you remember how we got to this point. Our presentation purpose today will consist of a background and context, which as I said, I will do very briefly, an overview of the community engagement campaign, Your Kitchener, Your Say, and then preview the next steps, what comes after this community engagement process. As you're aware, the Compass Kitchener mandate, I'm sure all of you will recall, is to engage Kitchener citizens in decision-making at the municipal level that includes validating strategic priorities on a regular basis with community input and participation, creating and leading public processes to determine community concerns which lead to identifying priorities for action, and then monitoring progress toward achieving that community vision. And of course, that monitoring has come to be known as the report card on the strategic plan, which another subcommittee of Compass Kitchener is currently involved in updating and will be coming to you soon with that. The community priorities that we are in the process of updating comprise an integral component of the City of Kitchener strategic plan. And it's important to remember that each 4-year strategic plan builds on the revisions, the updates of the plan for a healthy Kitchener, which, if you remember this, dated 2007 to 2027. So that's still very much part of this process, and what we are trying to do here is to build on that. Given that mandate of Compass Kitchener, we started this year preparing for the strategic plan update for 2015 to 2018 through a telephone survey of 1,002 residents, which was a statistically representative sample that took a high-level view of community priorities and important strategic insights. The survey results, I think, were in some ways very confirming or affirming for council and for staff in terms of the way people view the city and the way it's functioning. The survey looked at 10 priorities which related to those 6 areas that were in that 2007-2027 plan for a healthy Kitchener. And I'm sure you're familiar by now with what those 10 areas are. The majority of residents feel that the following should be top priorities: accountability, economic development, environment, and transportation. And if you'll notice on the chart here, we look at it from the perspective of what people said was a top priority and what they said was a second priority. But those top priorities did not stand alone. Citizens saw the other priorities as still important contributors to the quality of life that were highly valued by those that live in this community. In all cases, 75% or more said that each of these areas were either a first or second priority. And please remember, they could have said that it wasn't a priority at all. They had that option, but they didn't. They continued to see these areas as priorities for council and the city to be concerned about. So, having looked at the results of that Environics survey, our process now is to drill down on each of those 10 areas through a qualitative research process. And why are we doing that? Because the quantitative data that we got through the survey provides limited insights into what citizens are thinking. What we want to undertake now is qualitative research that allows an exploration of strategic themes in the citizens' own voices. It gives us greater understanding of awareness and expectations through a comprehensive community engagement plan. And that plan is what we're calling Your Kitchener, Your Say. Now, unless there are any questions, Laurie Major will talk about what she, Jen Green, and the Compass Kitchener subcommittee have done through a huge amount of work over the past few weeks to develop that community engagement plan. Our hope from Compass Kitchener is that you will be as excited by this process as we are, and that you will help us promote this process to the citizens in your ward and throughout the city. Thank you.
Okay, there is a person, councillor, who wishes to ask a question, and what I would say, the questions at this time, just keep them to the points that Theron has talked about. Not even necessarily what Jeff said, but just what Theron has spoken about. If you can stick to those comments first. Councillor Yunetsky?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for doing your job as you usually do on this particular project. A simple question, and priority number one, accountability. Would transparency be included in the umbrella of that term, accountability, or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Laurie?
Okay, so I'm going to give you an overview of the community engagement campaign that we're calling Your Kitchener, Your Say. And so Communications has developed a brand for this campaign so that it's recognizable and a brand that we can use on all of our promotional materials throughout the campaign. And this is sort of the look of it and the color of the main promotional materials that you'll be seeing through all of May and June, and actually starting next week to promote this campaign. So based on the information that Theron just reviewed, we came away from the Environics survey with sort of 10 priority areas. But of course, 10 is too many for us to engage the community on. So we wanted to package those up into no more than 6 strategic themes, with the primary emphasis on those that the majority of residents said was a top priority. So the way we're going to approach the community through Your Kitchener, Your Say is through the 6 themes that you see on your screen here. And so the sort of purplish bubbles under the headings give you an idea of the types of things we're going to be exploring within each theme. We are going to be using open-ended questions so that citizens can share their views and tell us what is important to them and what they'd like to see the city focus on in the next term of council. And we do have questions prepared for each of the themes. They're still being finalized through Communications to make sure that we're using plain language and we're presenting those questions in a way that'll be understandable to the general population. So the campaign itself offers a variety of ways for citizens to be involved. We have planned 11 different open houses, 5 of those at the Kitchener Market, which are really sort of a drop-in opportunity for people to learn more. So I'll cover a little more detail on what the open houses will include. We're also including 7 community workshops where citizens can come in and have a conversation about any of the 6 themes. And we have an additional 6 weekly themed workshops or discussions that will be held here at City Hall in the Rotunda, where people, if they really just want to come in and weigh in on one of the specific themes, like the environment or accountability or community engagement inclusion, they can do that over their lunch hour or immediately after regular work hours here at City Hall. So there will also be online and social media opportunities. And of course, while we're not specifically encouraging people to just email their comments, they're certainly welcome to do that. And they can call a campaign line as well, whether they have questions or things to contribute to the campaign and the comments that we're collecting. And for those people who would prefer just to take away a workbook or a paper survey and do it and drop it off, that will also be an option. So we have just today finalized the locations of the events, and so you'll see a little bit of change here from what is in the report. We were, over the last few days, really trying to finalize something closer in the Dune area because we didn't really have that area covered. And in order to do that, we had to shift some of the other dates around a little bit. So I think you have an updated schedule of the events. We just have one more date that we need to confirm, which is the June 12th in the Rotunda. So we will be having 6 community-based workshops, so certainly not one in every ward, but you can see sort of the location of those relative to the ward boundaries. So as far as the open house format, this is really for the primary purpose of promoting the campaign, making sure people can access information about their opportunities to participate, but we will also have opportunities for people to engage online at those open houses through technology that we have with us, and even fill out some paper surveys as well. So we will have the opportunity to capture feedback for those people where that's their preferred option for doing that. And we will have workbooks available and other information for how people can be involved. At the open houses, we'll have information displays that will include some context for people if they want to learn more about what the city is doing. And so on the next slide, I'll show you what an example of that might look like. And it's also an opportunity for members of Compass Kitchener and staff to answer questions to citizens about what this is about, what are we going to do with the information, and when they can hear back about the results. So as far as the information displays, it will be something like this. We will provide the Environics Community Survey results. We will give a description of what the city is already doing, so some of the strategies that are in place and the things that are already underway, the things we've made a commitment to, and sort of highlights of some fast facts, things that citizens might not know about in terms of how the city, what their role is in caring for the environment. And we will also have presentation material on the role of the city compared to the role of the region and the province in each of these areas to help guide citizens in their the types of things that they respond to, so it's as useful as possible. So the workshops themselves will be held in the community centers for the most part. There will be one held at the Kitchener Market on the 31st. And they'll really start with a welcome and an introduction, a short presentation on background information, so the information that you just saw for each of the themes. We will also explain to people the purpose of the sessions, and as well as the budget constraints, that we're not really looking for a wish list of new things that the city can do, but we're really looking for what are the most important things they'd like the city to focus attention on for the next 4 years, taking into consideration that there are real budget limitations in terms of what we can do. So people will be asked to join a table, and each of the tables will have a theme, so they'll get to join a discussion on a theme they're most interested in. After 30 minutes, they'll have the opportunity to move to another discussion on another theme and build on the comments from the previous discussion. There'll be a 1-minute report out on key ideas, thank you and next steps, and we are going to ask participants to do an evaluation so that we'll have a better idea of whether or not they felt the workshop was useful, did they feel that the questions were relevant and appropriate, and did they feel like they were being heard through the process. So we have a number of different ways that we're going to be promoting and advertising opportunities to be involved. Excuse me. And the webpage will be a key piece of that puzzle, and we're currently working on it. We'll also include the events on the City of Kitchener event calendar. We'll have brochures, invitations, tickets. We will be using newspaper advertisements, and we're just in the process of trying to make a decision about whether or not we'll use radio advertisements. There'll be posters and on-bus advertisements, and of course we'll use social media as well to get the word out. We're providing the community a lot of different opportunities to participate, so the promotion will be really important so that people are aware of those opportunities. So now I'd like to give you a preview of the next steps in terms of what we'll use this information for and how you will be involved in the process once this chapter of the process is complete. So what we've just reviewed with you is the part of phase 1 of the strategic planning process. And it's the community assessment piece. So it's the first phase and probably the most important phase of strategic planning in terms of understanding what the expectations are of the community. But that in itself does not give us enough information in order to go forward with a strategic plan for the next term of council. So for that reason, there are other phases to this process. So the community assessment information, which will result in a report to council on the community priorities and strategic directions, will become input into the overall environmental scan for the strategic plan, which in addition to the community assessment will also include a review of where the city is now, what strategies do we have in place, where are we making progress, where are we not, what are some of the trends in both what we're seeing here at the City of Kitchener, but also what are some of the trends in municipal government. And what are some of the things that other cities are doing in some of these areas, and what are they accomplishing? What are some of the innovations in the areas that we're exploring, things that we should consider for the future? And what are some of the challenges, things that the community may not be aware of, but we'll need to address in our next strategic plan if we want to deliver affordable, sustainable services to the community. So that research is being done right now. And so together with the results of the community assessment, that information will come to council and we'll ask for your direction and your input into the next phases of the process as well. And then we'll use that information to engage the organization and all of the leaders and staff who have responsibility for delivering services to the community to figure out what we should do, what goals should we set for the future, what can we do, what are some of the possibilities, and what are the constraints on what might be possible for the next term of council. Those really will be collaborative innovation sessions to try and generate some future thinking and some stretch goals for the organization based on what we heard from the community and what we know about the environment. And following that, some recommendations will be made to council, and this is where you'll have the opportunity to provide your feedback as well, take the lead on the process. I imagine that we will be doing some more community engagement at this phase to get the public's input on those ideas and recommendations and get your approval on the next strategic plan for the City of Kitchener. So the timelines are basically laid out on this slide. So we're going to, through May, for the most part, we're going to be doing this community engagement process. There will be a public report on community priorities and strategic directions. In March, once the new council term starts, there will be recommended goals and strategies for 2015 to 2018, and approval is expected or anticipated by June of next year. So that's my presentation. So do you have any questions or
There are
feedback?
some questions, yes. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah. First of all, good work. Most of it looks really, really good, and I like the multitude of means that you're using to solicit feedback from the community. One question that I have is, we've done a lot of community engagement at the Kitchener Market. Do you have experience, or does anyone have experience with the type of, not the type of feedback, but the amount of feedback that we're able to gain being at the market?
Not sure I heard your question. Probably. I have
that
hearing
again.
problems. And it's hard
No,
to
that's fine.
respond.
I just want to know from the past when we've used the Kitchener Market as a site to get community feedback. Has that been successful? Have we received a lot of feedback using that venue?
I wasn't part of the process last time, but when in talking to those that have at the Kitchener Market, because there's a lot of activity there and there's a lot of residents there, that people do take the time to engage in short periods, to share their views. So I think it will be more successful perhaps in promoting the events and getting the word out rather than getting feedback in, but we do want to provide an opportunity for that for those who wish to provide feedback.
Okay. I guess one of the concerns that I see is I think the market is a good venue, but we have a lot of events that are happening in the downtown and only one really in each area of the rest of the city. And while I understand that all residents go to the market, or a lot of residents, it's not just downtown focused. I'd like to see if we can expand upon the amount of engagement that's happening around the city with workshops. I'm really happy to see the Dune, because actually that was what I had written down, is I'd like to see one in Dune, because Country Hills was going to try and encompass 3 wards, but now there's one in Dune, and I think that's great. I'm just concerned that, we have all the market events, and the theme sessions are all held downtown as well. I'm just concerned about the ability to attract people from the suburbs in getting the feedback. I understand there's a whole host of ideas and ways people can provide feedback. That would just be my one concern, and I know you've tried really hard to spread it out throughout the city. And I'm not concerned that there's not one being held in Ward 5 at all. It's not that. I think it's just, when you look at the amount of things that are happening really at the market and in the rotunda, and then just one in kind of other neighborhoods on the suburbs, that concerns me a little bit. So I'll just throw that out there. And then the other thing was, I just had written down that with the awareness and promotion, if you can send the links for council to council, so that we can then forward via our Twitter and Facebook, that would be great, that we can try and help promote the survey and all the other things that you're doing to engage the community. But really good work.
Just before we go on, just to make sure I'm clear, the single sheet that was on the desks today is the most recent. The schedule attached to our report is now outdated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're referencing those, and as you did, Kelly, it's the new sheet. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And I have a bunch of questions, so I may actually go over my time, so I'm going to ask already to be in line for the next round. First of all, will we be looking for postal codes or addresses to make sure that they are Kitchener residents?
We weren't anticipating looking for that. What we were going to do was have a map of the city of Kitchener at each of the locations where we were engaging people, and ask people to put a dot on the map from where they're from. So I realize that might not be as verifiable as a postal code, but we were hoping to get a better sense of the distribution of where people's locations are. It would also give us the opportunity to inform people that are not from Kitchener that this process is for Kitchener citizens.
And I appreciate that, but I think that if we have postal codes, then at least nobody's having to give their exact address, but we will see if there is a trend towards the respondents. And especially the theme sessions at City Hall, I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to end up, especially with the 12 to 1, with the majority of attendees being city staff people. Certainly anybody who lives outside of the city of Kitchener won't likely come down. But I have a similar concern that Councillor Galloway-Seelock expressed around a little broader perspective. if you're and yes, people come from all over the place to work here at City Hall. We may have some people from businesses coming in for those theme sessions, but we may also get a proliferary of students who walk through at that time. The 5 to 6, I'm very concerned about in terms of capturing people who may only be able to finish work at 5:30 and not get here in time. I'm wondering if we should expand that time frame. My other question was related to the second slide, may not have been second slide, but the slide that talks about 12,000 registered participants on Earth Day of 2013 and the 8 hectares per 1,000 residents. I guess I'm trying to understand how will that translate for important information for those people participating.
Can we go back to that slide?
There it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm just this is just the one about the environment. So I'm just trying to see how is this relatable to any respondent who's participating in. And is this the one only for the caring of our environment? Right. This is just a slide for that particular theme session.
Yeah, this one is just an example of the kind of information that we will provide on the information boards. They're not finalized yet either. I just wanted to give you an idea of the type of information. So we wanted to give people a sense of, the kinds of things that the city does do and the scope of the city's responsibility with respect to the environment. So things like, the number of kilometers of trails gives a focus to the environment around something that the city has a very specific, significant responsibility for.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm looking at the 12,000 registered participants because that can include people from all over the region who might be attending the Huron Natural Area. And what does that tell the people who are participating in these themed events? What does that information really mean to them? And that led me to the other question related to cost sheets, because you were talking about how the desires may be for something that's within a budgetary constraint. So is it possible for the information to be given to the people who are attending these sessions of what it would cost to put in a kilometer of trail? What would it cost to build a swimming pool? What would it cost to put in sidewalks or snowplow sidewalks? So giving some real concrete examples that the attendees of these sessions could say, oh, gee, I didn't know it's going to cost blah to plow every sidewalk in the city, because that's something we always hear in the wintertime. So just concrete examples, I think, would really help them. I don't think it'll help temper what their comments would be, but give them a fuller understanding when they're participating in these sessions. Am I out of time yet? Not yet?
8 seconds.
8 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to step back and let
Just
other
look
questions.
back in then afterwards. Okay, Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I guess I have a couple questions and some really good work in here as well. I have a couple now, and I may come back later on, depending on where the conversation goes. I would echo some of the comments that Councillor Galloway-Seelock made around the market sessions and whether or not we should be looking at some other alternatives around the city. I think for me, what's really noticeable on this list is that we're going to all city facilities. So what we're likely to get are people who are already used to, comfortable coming to city facilities, already come and use them on a regular basis or attend our sessions and so on. What we're not doing is reaching out to any of the populations that typically don't come to city facilities for whatever reason. Maybe cultural, because they come for a country perhaps where governments and citizens didn't get along well together, or for one of many other reasons. So I'm surprised we haven't looked at things like shopping malls. I know that, a number of the larger grocery stores have large community rooms that are available. Maybe some places of faith, which we use for community meetings now already when we can't get a city facility. So trying to reach out into places where we don't normally that don't normally attract people to city facilities. So that's one thing that I would like to see. The other thing, I would agree with Councillor Fernandez in terms of the themed sessions. They very much seem to be focused around people who, don't work 9 to 5. Because if they do, it pretty much rules them out from participating in either of them. So I think you may want to look at, doing I think a noon or an evening one are great, or maybe doing a noon and on one day a noon and a later evening one, like 7 to 8 or something like that, or an after work one and a 7 to 8, or maybe a breakfast, and just mixing it up a little bit. So giving, again, more people more options, maybe even going into a Saturday with one. I'm not sure what those dates are right now.
Just about on that point, are there any Saturdays on the list?
There is, not for the theme sessions, but I just want to point out that the general workshops, people will have a choice of what themes that they can talk about at those as well. And so those will give people, sort of a one-stop shop to talk about whatever theme that they want. There is one session on a Saturday, and that's at the market on May 31st between 10 and 2 in the morning.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Brennan.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, those would be my my two main points at this time. Like I say, generally, I think it's what I see. I like the extensiveness of it, and the opportunities to be engaged in the process, and I think that's important in terms of the document going forward.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'm like my fellow councillors, I'm very happy with the direction this is going, but I also share a lot of the concerns with respect to how we're reaching out. Are we going to be recording the addresses of everyone that participates, that does the workbook, that sort of thing, and compiling that as well?
Sorry, I didn't catch the end part of that comment.
Sir, are we going to be capturing the addresses, like the location of the residents?
No, that wasn't going to be part of the thing.
You may not have been here earlier on when there was a comment made about getting postal code, which would identify general areas that they're coming here, not necessarily specific addresses, but postal code. You may not have been here for that.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't know. So we will be capturing that, the postal codes?
That's going to be taken into consideration.
Okay, very good. Was there any thought, again, I'm concerned about the representation, so was there any thought put forward with respect to possibly choosing some random addresses throughout the city and distributing the workbooks?
Again, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. It's just the acoustics in this spot.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, my concern is, again, like Councillor Urbanovich, what I'm seeing here is, again, like 12 of these events are, downtown, essentially. And I'm concerned that also, I recall from the previous work in this area, the market was again another focused area where we gathered feedback. So my concern is we're engaging the engaged. I want to try and get some of the feedback from some of the people that aren't as engaged, because I think their input is just as valid.
So put your question forth again.
Certainly. So my question is, was there any thought put toward possibly reaching out randomly to people that in various addresses within the city to get some feedback from people who might not otherwise be engaged?
Are you suggesting like a door-to-door, or?
Sure.
Like we were, part of the promotional campaign is to have brochures and invitations for those events that we could hand out to people at places like grocery stores and the train station, so that they would at least know what those opportunities are to come and be engaged. As well as the online options for those people who are just not comfortable showing up at a face-to-face engagement event. So we were hoping to reach people who wouldn't, just normally seek out these opportunities with the promotional materials that we'll be using. I think, at the market and at the open houses, we will be trying to engage people one-on-one. I think in order to go sort of to choose people randomly and go to their homes or where they are to engage them individually is sort of a level of effort. We don't have enough staff or resources to support in order to do that and get a number of people engaged.
Okay, another alternative might be just for the workbooks at least, to mail them out to some specific random addresses. I'll have comment as well. There's her.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, I feel that I'm going to repeat a lot of the same questions. I think you're doing excellent work in this field. My question has to do with locations. I think you almost have to be on a resident's doorstep in order to attract their attention to this kind of survey. So within my own ward, for example, there's even getting people to come up to the rotunda, to me, is a difficult task. You'd be much more likely to get them if you went to the pavilion in Victoria Park or if you went to Rockaway Seniors Centre. I don't know. Has there been effort to spread these around more? It's the same kind of question, I recognize.
We were primarily looking at city facilities because they come at no cost, and it's easier for us to get available space and time there. We have looked at other facilities, like the event that'll be held at the Waterloo Regional Museum was one, but those types of things are more complicated and difficult to arrange, and there is a cost associated with them that we try to minimize the cost factor, which is why we primarily chose community centers.
Mr. Wilmer, do you want to add something on that point?
Well, just for context, I just want to remind Council that this is not a survey or a referendum or anything like that. The Environics work is statistically representative. We've got input from 1,000 people across the community. This is a conversation. This is to help us understand and help you understand, what does it all mean? And so it's probably why we wanted to reach people where they're at community centers or the market or shopping malls and grocery stores, as you've suggested. But it's also why we're not so concerned with this being statistically significant, that because we've done the statistically significant part, of the representative part. This is really to engage people, to help us understand a cross-section of the community, people who are aware of what the municipality does, so that we can understand for our strategic planning efforts. Again, this is not for a tactical operational plan. This is for us to inform a strategic plan. And so it really is to be high level. And so whether people understand costs or ratios or numbers, it's really, if you're saying there's not enough trails in this community, that's what we need to know. Whether it costs a lot or a little, you know what? That's what we'll work with council on over the next 4 years or the next 20 years. We just want that high-level input. What's not working well? What do you want to see change? And to build on the results of the Environics work. So I don't know whether that gives a different context to the type of questions or concerns that you're asking, but let's keep in mind that the outcome of this, or the output of this, is a strategic plan, not a tactical operational plan.
Mr. Wilmer, I understand that, but you need two people to tango. You need two people for that conversation. So I'm just anxious you get as many people out to give you that kind of feedback. And my concern is you won't get them unless you're, as I said, right on their doorstep. And I know that's difficult, but that's the point I'm trying to make. I also, for the same reason, have concerns about the market. I share some of those concerns. When I go to the market, I go to shop, and I'm moving really quickly, trying to move quickly, because it's very crowded. And I certainly wouldn't want to be stopping to have this kind of conversation at the market. So it's just my comment.
Okay, Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, thank you. In regard to the 10 priorities that are listed here, and I can understand the responses that have come back identifying them, but when I think of during the course of the year or during the course of the term, the various inquiries I've had in terms of my constituents, or even constituents across the city, there are comments on downtown and community centers and arts programs, etc. But the biggest one that I have is not even listed here, and that's basically when it comes to budget time, like my taxes and how much money we're going to be spending and where is it going to and how are we going to be addressing these things. Now, granted, transportation, environment, arts and culture, recreational leisure facilities, downtown, they're nice to have in terms of trails and improvements, community centers, but they all cost money. And I think when we're going in this, basically, is in a direction of those facilities and items that are nice to have and nice to have in the community, but they all come at a cost. So my question to you is, and in this analysis that you've provided here, this feedback, was there not any comments made in terms of the dollars and cents, taxation, budgets, and consideration of that as a city as a whole?
Laurie or Theron, perhaps, in terms of the survey, because these come from the survey itself. These aren't staff's 10. This is the survey result.
Yes, and in the embryonic survey, and I think it's included in the report, we did ask a number of questions on taxes and financial issues, and the results were fairly clear. 61% of people said they would support a tax increase at the rate of inflation in order to maintain services. 82% said they feel they get good value for their tax dollars, and 87% rate the quality of life in the City of Kitchener as good or excellent. There were a number of other questions as well, sort of related to finances and taxes and who should pay and those sorts of things. Those questions were very clear and very direct. And I thought the answers were, the response we got sort of demonstrated a clear preference by the community based on a statistically representative sample. So we didn't feel that it was necessary to go out and ask those same questions again to the community at this time, because I think we have fairly reliable results that based on statistically representative sample in those areas.
So of these areas that you got in 10, were they sort of in a category that you just sort of check off a box and identify, or just sort of give me your concerns and we'll write them down?
We will have a number of different ways of asking people's questions in these areas. For the most part,
I think his question was, in the survey, was it an open-ended survey or was it just ticking off the box?
Oh, in the embryonic survey?
Yeah.
They were, the question formats were different depending on the questions. As far as the number of people who would support a tax increase at the rate of inflation, people were given 3 options and asked to choose which one they felt was most closely aligned to their values.
Okay, thank you.
For the top 10, was that?
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I forgot to ask one question, and then I have a quick comment and I'll be done. Was there any thought given when you were thinking of locations to see, and I don't know if there is, but any festivals that may be happening during the time frame of which you're doing your community consultation, or events at the auditorium where you may get different people?
We are looking at the different events throughout the city during this time as opportunities to promote the engagement. But my understanding is in the past when we've tried to engage people at events, like for example at the Odd, people are there for a purpose, to watch a hockey game or whatever, and they're not particularly open to getting involved in a lengthy discussion about city matters, and so engagement hasn't been that successful, piggybacking on that type of thing, but we have looked at the events in terms of opportunities to promote.
That's good to hear that the opportunities to promote there. I think depending on if we do have any festivals, that may be an opportunity because people are generally in the park or at the event for a while and may be able to spend a little bit of time having that conversation. But the auditorium, that's great that at least at events you're going to use it to promote. That's really good. And I quickly just wanted to make a comment on what Jeff said early as we started with regards to council speaking at these events. I actually would take it one step further and suggest that council shouldn't speak at these at all, but be acknowledged that they're there for the simple, that we're there to listen and to show that council cares. But If your point is that you can't speak in your own ward because you're worried about the campaigning, well, any resident can go to any session and you're still going to run into that problem, right? So that's why I don't think any council shouldn't have a speaking role, but be acknowledged that they're there, and staff or whoever's facilitating can suggest that, council cares. That's why they're here to listen to you. But I think this should really be staff driven or facility or community driven with Compass Kitchener, and that council will have their opportunity as the process goes on, as you outlined in the different phases of this whole entire engagement piece. Okay. And I just wanted to say before I'm cut off that it's great work. Keep up the good work. I think you've got a great plan moving forward. With a couple minor tweaks that maybe are suggested today, you've done a lot of great work here, and I think we'll end up with a great strategic plan at the end of the day because of all the engagement we'll get from the community.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks. The one other question I had regarded, it said that in one of your slides it said dedicated email. Can you explain what that meant?
Oh, we have a yoursay@kitchener.ca email address.
Oh, I see.
For people, and so that will be on the posters and the signs, so it will be easy for people to send email through that, and that will come through we'll be able to open those and see them.
Okay, and again, you've heard over and over again about the different locations, and quickly listing Rockaway Centre. It's also a city-owned facility, and the two golf courses. You'll get a completely different, I think, perspective from if you consider those locations than you might from people coming through the Rotunda and at the market. And I'll make a quick comment. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to hear, as councillors. And any of us who will be going door to door are going to hear a different perspective. But if Councillor Galloway-Seeluck is not far off the mark in that we probably need to just sit and listen and take as many notes as we possibly can, because if this is what is going to happen, that we're going to get some input from people. And I also think it might be important for us to take a look at halfway through what kind of attendance have we had. And see if there's and that's why I think it's important to gather the postal codes. You'll get a quick sense of where people are coming from. You don't want to have the converted speaking all the time. You want to try and capture some people who may not necessarily always make comments about things unless they're angry or upset or really feeling good about something. So I look forward to attending as many as I possibly can and just hearing what the public has to say. Thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you. And I had a similar point to make as for opportunities outside of our city-owned venues, where we could look at, festivals, obviously different neighborhood associations do their thing as well. And I know you mentioned that obviously sometimes it's difficult when people are attending, say, for a game, that they are interested in engaging in this type of conversation. And I agree with you, but there are various different types of events and gatherings that are more open, and it's a great way to engage in conversation of just having a booth. And I would hope to see that we capture that opportunity, because I think there was a running theme of some of the comments and questions made, that we want to make sure that this is a random engagement, that we are not going to the same demographic or same individuals repeatedly for the same sort of questioning, that we allow opportunity to get a varying view on this. And of course, the other point I was going to make is for council as well, as to their involvement. So, keeping in mind of the sensitivity of this as election year, have any ideas been engaged as to what council can, what type of role they can participate with getting messaging out at least, so that at least we can ensure that without swaying the conversation, but at least we can engage with the constituents to ensure that they have an opportunity to participate, so to get the word out. I'm guessing that would be something that would be encouraged by council members to do.
Mr. Wilmer?
I'm racking my brain here because I know that in the work leading up to this, we were looking for any and every opportunity to involve councillors, and one of the things we thought about was, we could use councillors, or councillors could use the opportunity to help promote it. And we actually decided against that for I'm sure valid reasons that I can't recall right now, but it may have been along the lines is that this gives the impression or gives an unfair advantage to councillors during an election period to promote themselves or to be perceived as promoting themselves. And I think that may have been the reason why we decided against that. Certainly, we do want to promote it, and we do want you to be interested in it. We just don't want to be pushing the boundaries too far. Absolutely. Even if technically okay, the perception may not be.
And I agree with that, and I think I support that sentiment as well, and that's exactly how it needs to be done. But I think it is a missed opportunity, and if something like this is reoccurring, we need to ensure, while planning ahead of time, that it doesn't fall in an election year, so that we can capitalize an immense opportunity for engagement with the constituency and those that they have elected as their leadership.
So through the Mayor, because it's come up a couple of times now, let's take it back and consider that again and see if we can satisfy ourselves that there is a way to do it.
Perfect. Okay, and I'll make my comments as well. Points have been made as for the fiscal aspect of this conversation, and I appreciate what Mr. Wilmer has said. This is not a statistical survey rather than a conversation, and I think when you have a conversation, it needs to be realistic. When we're posing questions as to the priorities and the things that our citizens want in their city, those come with cost aspects. And I think our citizens were very clear through the survey that they do not want tax escalations beyond inflation. They want it contained and within a reasonable, affordable aspect. So when we're talking about larger discussions, fast packs, 1.3 kilometers per trail per thousand, rather than narrowing down and being so focused as to, well, this is exactly what it's going to cost, include, this is great to have, and this is something that's being communicated through our community engagement and surveys like Compass, the survey that was conducted, but this may not be possible within the inflationary tax increases. So that type of a level of conversation needs to be had to ensure that it is realistic. Thank you, and great work by staff and, of course, the Compass Kitchener to accommodate this. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to hear exactly what our citizens want of their city.
Okay, just on the, unless I misunderstood you, Councillor Singh, in terms of doing this during an election year or not, you're sort of stymied. It's this year because it's some knowledge of the existing council having looking at a go-forward basis, but it will be the new council that will have the final approval of that strategic plan. But they will. New people don't have to rely strictly on. Well, I've only been here for a month or so. And that gives it the best of both worlds. So I think we're a little bit caught in between, but do you want to respond to that?
Yes, very quickly. And it's an opportunity for conversation. Sometimes we're seeking for that opportunity to engage our citizens to focus on these type of priorities and asking them. So that's why I'm saying it's a missed opportunity to engage between their leadership and their constituency, that's all.
Okay. Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And I really appreciate the work Compass Kitchener does. I don't know where the community would be if we didn't have this kind of steering mechanism. I think it's so comprehensive that we really touch the values and the priorities of the community in a deeper way. We heard that when we did the reflection on the whole casino issue, but this gets at it on a regular basis, and I'm really appreciative of it. I wonder if we have reached out to try and reach some of the unusual suspects in other ways. For instance, are we pushing this notification out to like the Social Planning Council, the Downtown Medical Center, Opportunities Waterloo Region, the KW Community Foundation, things like that? Are we letting them know about this? Because they have access to people with lived experience that might not otherwise know about this.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to take advantage of all of the different agencies and institutions in the city that can help us get this message out and encourage people to participate.
And my last question is just about people with disabilities and access for those kinds of folks. Have we given thought to people that have disabilities and also those with language barriers about how we're going to encourage them to come forward and enable them to participate?
We still have to finalize our plans around that, but yes, we are considering that, and we expect to have a plan for those things.
Great. And I guess the last piece is about something Councillor Singh alluded to, and it's something I've given thought to, is the idea of neighborhood associations and cultural groups. And also, I guess, the Multicultural Center could help connect with this, because there are groups there that would have access to, in kitchen table conversations, other people that normally wouldn't be aware of it or come to the table. So I would just say briefly, as a way of a comment, I agree that I don't think any councillor should be introducing this, but I do encourage us all to attend the workshops and participate at the tables. I think that's our role, and to encourage participation in any ways we can on a low-key basis, and to write about it, but really it's not about us. It's about the citizens, and to listen to what they have to say.
Okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, and I'll try and be brief. I understand this isn't supposed to be a statistically significant representation, but my concern in general is the representation. Yes, it's a conversation, but my concern is of the 20-odd events here, more than half are occurring downtown, and to be frank, none in the ward that I represent. If you want people like myself to buy into the results of this, and I really want to because I think all of the work behind it is solid, I have to have confidence that it's representative. It doesn't have to be the 10% of the city that I represent, and it doesn't have to be to that degree, but I just have serious concerns of the absolute number of residents of the community that I represent that are going to have any sort of feedback in this at all. So I think you've heard a lot of good feedback from council how to address that, and I wish you the best of luck in engaging as many people as possible.
Okay, those are the final comments. As I have sort of keeping track of some of the principal issues that you, staff, will take back. Several people have talked about locations. That's one issue. The times, the potential of councillors helping to promote this item, and Mr. Wilmer spoke to that again. And oh yes, in terms of some of the background material that would be there, as an example, this one here was not to have all costs, all budgets, and that sort of thing, but having some relative costs so that things can be put into perspective for members when they say, well, I'd like to have 30 more kilometers of trail next year. Well, what is it? I use that as an extreme example. The other points that I just wanted to, one point. First of all, it is a good program, I believe, and we have been pushing and pushing and pushing the boundaries with the help of community Compass Kitchener in terms of public engagement, and that's been a good thing. And every time I hear the word Compass Kitchener, and I think I'm the only one in the room, no, perhaps not, in terms of council, that can put their minds back to 2000-ish, when we first brought forward Compass Kitchener. And a councillor at the time, is not on council today, was skeptical, cynical, and opposed to us forming Compass Kitchener, because they could not see how this could possibly impact what we would be doing at the City of Kitchener. It was too theoretical, and that's my word now, because I can't recall exact words that this individual put forward. But Compass Kitchener really has evolved into as to be an integral part of the evaluation of council, as we know from the report card system, on an annual basis or term basis. And right through to now, what we're doing with this is public engagement. So it has come a long way. And a lesson learned from that, I suppose, is that just because one isn't in favor of something at the beginning, because you don't know what it can become, give it some time to work its way through. This is 14 years later, and it's become a valuable tool for us. So again, thank you. There are no other speakers, and so, He's still got his microphone
Thank you,
on.
Mr.
So
Mayor.
Wilmer.
If I may, just a couple of questions of clarification. Because we heard a couple of members of council suggest that it would be more appropriate if there was no speaking role for the councillors to introduce sessions. And I don't want to jump to the conclusion that that's a consensus of council, since we've heard from just two, but nobody else spoke up to say, I disagree. So can we get some more certainty around that? Is that the will of council?
Let's do it just a little, not get into debate on this thing, but just a straw poll here.
And maybe I'd better ask my second question, because it might influence the results of the straw poll. The second question relates to, I think it was Councillor Glenn Graham said that, our role would be to be at the tables and participating at the tables. That might be a bigger concern, actually. What we see your role is to be there listening. And being at the tables participating could be very problematic, either because people perceive it as campaigning or because your involvement influences the discussion. Sometimes even your being there intimidates people into either not participating or skews their participation. So maybe we didn't make that clear enough, is that we certainly encourage you to be there. What we see as your main role is to be present, be seen, be interested, be listening, as opposed to being main participants in the discussion. So with that being said, how do you feel about the opportunity to give an introduction or being muzzled, essentially, because it's in a campaign year or election year?
Okay. I guess we'll go around the horseshoe if you wish to speak and add something, but I don't want to get into a lengthy discussion. I think we just take a straw poll on this. Councillor Urbanovich?
Thanks. I guess the long and the short of it for me is this is about hearing from the residents, and that should be the first priority and the focus. I think however you handle that, and I leave it to staff to balance all those various issues and concerns, the same thing needs to apply to council and to others who aren't on council that potentially are running for office as well, so that there's a certain equity playing out in that respect.
It's a good point. Those who are registered, at least at the time of the events, I think should be cautioned as to what they're putting forward in the same boat. Considering that, if the straw poll says there's no involvement of members of council. So let's just take a straw poll on the involvement of councillors in making any comment or introducing the issue. Those in favor of no involvement. Can you put your hands? It seems to be unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, yes, Councillor Galloway-Sila.
I'm fine with that decision. I don't know. I'm kind of struggling with the fact that we are going to worry about what other potential candidates are going to do. They're residents in our community, and they should be able to have their say. Us as council members are going to have our say at some point in time. They may not end up on council, and we're going to be stifling their voice. I don't think they should be able to bring their campaign material in. I think that's legit, but if they want to come and have that discussion with the community, they should be able to, as we should be able to discuss with the community when we're there outside of the context of the facilitated meeting. We should be able to have those one-on-one conversations if we want to. And I'm not suggesting in a campaign manner, but I'm concerned if we're going to suggest that we're going to keep our eye on registered candidates.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to be quite that dictatorial in my comments, but I can understand that it came across that way.
We've got media here, and I don't want it to get out that we're going to potentially
Fair
restrict.
Fair enough, and I think it's a good point that you make. And so I think everyone needs to simply use some common sense on this. Mr. Wilmer.
So yes, we can provide clarification on that. So Councillor Galloway's right, and I think that's much closer to the mark as to what's intended here. So for people who are not sitting councillors who have registered to run, we will inform them of the limits of how they go about campaigning, that this would not be an appropriate place to do campaigning. But Councillor Galloway is quite right. They are still citizens. They are still entitled to participate as citizens, and they don't have the advantage of sitting councillors. Then that's what we're trying to caution against.
Councillor Galloway.
Just wanted to suggest that I just want to correct you. My name is Councillor Galloway-Sila. Thank you.
I apologize. Thank you.
That's okay.
Councillor Fernandez.
Just a point of clarification. It is all right for us to tweet out that on May 6th, for example, that at Country Hills, there's a workshop open house happening, right? That's.
I think that's what they were going to go back and originally they would said no, but I think they're going to change that.
Okay, all right, because I think it's a great opportunity for just at least to share the information and Facebook it if we can. Okay.
Okay. That being the completion of that item, then I assume. Did you have something else to follow up? Theron, you looked like you wanted to comment.
Just if I could just take one moment. I know it looks on the schedule like there's a lot of things that are happening downtown. And I think that some of your suggestions about alternative facilities could certainly be looked at. But I wanted to make 2 points. One is that the open houses that take place, and you'll notice there's a number of them before the workshops, and there are a number of those at the market, but those are primarily opportunities to promote the rest of the engagement process. They aren't actually, we're not going to be gathering data when we're standing at the market, getting people, we will be talking about their opportunity to use the workbook, to attend other events, that kind of thing. So I think that skews perhaps the balance here. I think the other point I wanted to make is that for each one of these workshops, we need volunteer facilitators, volunteer note takers, and Compass Kitchener is stepping up and they're signing up as individuals for each one of those. But there are limits to the number that we can undertake. So just a caution, if we're not doing quite, all of the places that you would like us to be, I think in part it's a matter of resources as well. Thanks.
Yeah, fair point actually in terms of the open houses. They're there for promotion purposes. Yeah. Okay. One more question on this?
Theron, I just had a quick question. I know that you are going to have an all committee gathering, but have you maybe reached out to the other advisory committees to see if there's any interest in helping for facilitating and participating?
We are going to be asking that, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yep. Thanks. Good suggestion.
Okay. Thank you very much. 2 things. Just to remind Council, I think you were sent, perhaps during this meeting, the agenda, the timelines for the My Ideal City reception this evening, or this afternoon actually. But 5:15, the students will arrive here in the chamber and want to go promptly at 5:30 with the kids. And then, particularly if you are one of the people who are volunteering for a little bit of a tour as a tour guide, that'll happen about 6 o'clock. 6:30, dinner will be available for us in the caucus room. And then finally, motion to authorize the caucus meeting for later on. Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Galloway-Sealock. Those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. This meeting is adjourned.